Folks, today we're going to talk about a book I finished relatively recently, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 1 in his series, The Stormlight Archive. Now, for those who don't know, this is projected to be a 10-book series built in 2 5-book arcs. The first 4 books of the first arc are out already, and book 5, Wind and Truth, will be out this December. After that, Sanderson is going to take a multi-year break to write some other stuff before he gets back to books 6 through 10 of the Stormlight Archive. But books 1 through 5 should be pretty self-contained. Now, if you're worried about spoilers, do not sweat it. There will be nothing in this video that you wouldn't get from reading the blurbs on the backs of the books. Now, I'm not exactly a complete newcomer to the works of Brandon Sanderson. I read the first 2 Mistborn books some time ago, and I liked them a lot. I thought they were very good, well done, and pretty satisfying, but I never got on to book 3, The Hero of Ages, for whatever reason. I think it just worked out that it didn't happen. Now, 15 or so years later, Sanderson is 4 books into this massive series that I take to be his most epic and ambitious yet, The Stormlight Archive. The series is set on the windswept world of Roshar, where these massive and devastating storms hit the place pretty regularly. These are called high storms, and both the human inhabitants of Roshar and the plant and animal life have adapted to life in this very harsh environment. You will find relatively few direct analogs to Earth organisms, except for like shelled animals like crustaceans and stuff. There's a lot of that. Due in part to the way this book starts, I felt like the level of technology present in this world was pretty medieval, but the further I read into it, the more I got like an Age of Reason type of vibe, with different magical effects standing in for technological effects that we saw historically. And of course, because it's Brandon Sanderson, this world and magic system are extremely meticulously thought out, and attention to detail that shows in every single part of this book. I'm not convinced that Sanderson is succeeding, and he is probably one of the most successful authors working in fantasy today, not necessarily because of raw talent, but because of just the amount of work that he puts into this stuff. The amount of hard work and determination that went into this book is amazing. However, comparing this book to the Mistborn books that I had read previously, these were not just satisfying and well done. This book absolutely blew my pants clean off. Now, Sanderson is not a perfect writer. His worlds, and especially his names, and sometimes his magic systems, can feel a little bit too structured, a little bit inorganic to me. Sometimes his narrative voice feels a little bit forced, and his characters are maybe not as deep and rich as you might find in, say, a Robin Hobb. But throughout the course of the book, all of this does hold together. The plot and the characters and the magic system and the world building all come together to provide us with a very satisfying conclusion to this book. This is the fabled Sanderlanche that people talk about, where he's going to build the momentum throughout the course of this massive book, and then for the last 20 or 30% of it, which might be the length of an entire more conventional fantasy novel, you absolutely cannot put this book down. Sanderson's mastery of plotting and momentum is second to absolutely nobody. Now, The Way of Kings has 3 central point-of-view characters, and therefore 3 main story arcs. First of all, you have Kaladin, who is an ex-surgeon and ex-soldier who life has been hard on, let's put it that way. Second, you have Shallan, who is the daughter of a minor and kind of beleaguered noble house who has her own dark secrets and her own secret plan that she's trying to execute throughout the course of the book. And lastly, we have High Prince Dalinar, who is a key figure in this big war that is kicked off by the events at the very, very beginning of the book, but he has now begun to question both this war and his role in it, due in part due to a series of mysterious visions that he's been having. Some of Dalinar's point of view chapters are split with his son Adolin, who's kind of this pompous, spoiled, bratty, duelist type fella, but by the end of this book, you are probably going to find Adolin intensely likable despite all that. You engage with these characters, even if they're not as deep as they might have been in some other fantasy novel or in the hands of some other fantasy writer. You engage with these characters and you will find them either intensely likable or absolutely loathsome in a very good way. And while these three main story threads are not completely unified by the end of the book, they are to some extent unified, and one can definitely see additional directions that this story might well go. The book's also broken up with these regular interludes and flashbacks. The flashbacks in this book are from Kaladin's point of view, but this is not solely a book that's tightly focused on Kaladin. You get a lot of development of all three story arcs and all three point of view characters here. But the flashbacks are giving you Kaladin's backstory, and it's rough. Now, the interludes proper are these little vignettes that may be characters that we'll see later. Some of them definitely are, and some of them may just be little vignettes that are going to elaborate on or illuminate certain sections of the world that Sanderson is building for us here. In mass market paperback, this book is over 1,240 pages long. That's a big book. And I did find some parts of this book to be kind of challenging to read, particularly early on, and that's not because of pacing. This book feels remarkably unpadded for as long as it is. It is instead the level of character trauma that you have to deal with some of these characters, which is a good thing, but it can be hard to take. And it's easy for an author to overdo that and make the whole experience unpalatable to a sensitive reader like myself. But here Sanderson walks up to the very precipice and then goes in a different direction multiple times that I found to be really satisfying. Really satisfying for both the characters and me, the reader. This is not a perfect book, but what book is perfect? If you know of a perfect book, mention it in the comments. I think the best that we can reasonably expect to have is a book that is perfect for us at the particular time that we're reading it. And for me, The Way of Kings definitely hit just like that. I'm giving this a solid 5 out of 5 stars. I have the highest admiration for this book and the highest recommendation from me. This is a terrific book. Now, I've already read the next 2 books in the series, plus the 2 novellas, so I'm kind of further ahead than you'll be after finishing this book. And like with Mistborn, you might leave this book at the end saying, that was really satisfying. It was so satisfying that I don't necessarily feel obliged to move on to the next book right away. As is the case with Mistborn, I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you make that kind of decision. I think you should continue with the series. Now, what does that mean? You'll have to stay tuned for that.